Okay, everyone, let's reconvene. Let's call our public meeting back to order. Later today, I'll be calling questions from the online audience, as indicated. If you're viewing this online, you should go and tweet your message using the hashtag BIFAD. I'd like to now move to get my talking points. We're going to move to youth perspectives, challenges, and opportunities in the agriculture and food sectors. I'm glad we've got a very good panel here for good dialogue and good discussion. It will be led by Michael McCabe. He is the youth agency youth coordinator for USAID. He brings over 28 years of professional experience in managing international development programs. In his current role, he is responsible for helping integrate youth engagement and youth development issues across the agency. With that, I'll turn it to you, Mike McCabe.
Thank you so much. And welcome back from lunch. We have that enviable time slot when you've just finished eating that wonderful tart and you're getting that sugar high. And so hopefully we'll have a good, engaging conversation. And what we really encourage you to do is think about what questions you want to also ask of, 2 out of those 1.8 billion young people who want to be part of that solution right now and how they're doing that. And so when we were designing this, we had a lot of discussions about, what voices we had on here. Obviously, from the research perspective, from a policy perspective, but quite frankly, looking at it from the position of young people who are on that front line every day, either looking for that job or looking to connect other young people to that job. And Ignatius is from Uganda. When we think about, the big pause button that's sometimes put on young people, where so many politicians and others say you're the leaders and the hope of the future. Well, Uganda, the average Ugandan is 14.8 years old. So that's 50% of the population is under the age of 15. You can't put a pause button on that if you want to meet the demands of development there. And so how we engage young people as partners is key to how USAID and our partners work together on these issues. So again, it's a privilege to be with all of you and to have this opportunity to have this discussion. In my role, as was mentioned, I work with our missions and our bureaus thinking about how do we move from rhetoric to real effectiveness in engaging young people and integrating them into the assessment process using youth-led research. How do we move them into the design process together with us, into the implementation, and how do we learn together and evaluate? About 2 weeks ago, we had another event called USAID Youth and Innovation, where we selected 18 young innovators from around the world in food security, in ag, in countering violent extremism, a lot of different topics. And I think people were fascinated to hear how articulate these young people were about how they were approaching it, how one of our implementing partners now is a youth-led network in Kenya that came out of the Yes Youth Can movement. The National Youth Bunge Association now has 1 million members, 23,000 youth councils, and they run youth savings and loan banks across Kenya. We have a young woman, 26 years old, became a doctor, found she couldn't find an opportunity to work once she got married, so she created a telemedicine platform in Pakistan to connect young women doctors to rural clinics to deliver telemedicine. So at the recent World Bank Youth Summit, we had about 400 young leaders, social and economic entrepreneurs there. And as they were talking, more and more of them used the term blockchain. And you could see this look in the room between those who are under age 30 and those who are over age 30. And those over 30 were like, yes, blockchain, yes, blockchain. And they're like, what the hell is blockchain? I will leave that to you to go back and look at. But young people were using blockchain for civil registry in Indonesia or rural electrification projects in India. That's why we need to bring young people into the planning process, because they're dealing with a different set of tools than a lot of us who have decades of experience and have done a lot of research. But sometimes if we don't bring those two pieces together, we really don't maximize the impact we could have. that's why I'm really glad today to get some of that insight from two young leaders that we're glad to have with us here. And to talk a little bit about it, let me introduce first Patricia Gichinga from Kenya. She works with Media Company, and they produce social media, television, and radio programming to affect normative behavior change with young people around agriculture, food security, and other issues. And what I love about them is they come up with the coolest names of their shows and their programs. So she worked on Makatuno Junction, Shamba Shape Up, Shamba Chef, No Zone, and most recently what she'll talk about is Don't Lose the Plot. So they look at ways of getting young people excited about agriculture and food security across all of East Africa and looking at really the ag business value chain and how we connect them. And then we also have Ignatius Ahu Musa, and he is from Uganda, and he is the co-founder of Art Planet Academy, and he's also a Young African Leaders Initiative, so a YALI fellow from 2016, correct? And so he is the founder of a agriculture education and extension program that's increasing farming skills and food security in rural areas of Uganda, mainly in the western part. And after having watched so many of his siblings graduate and not find any jobs, he decided that he needed to reject old systems and curricula and design a new curricula that was more project-based learning in primary schools, secondary schools, and universities, and then designed a program to really extend out those sorts of innovative enterprises for agriculture from school-based and having the young people replicate them in their homes. So he was nominated last year as one of Africa's top 15 young entrepreneurs below age 22. He's 22 years old. I think of what I was doing at 22. I was not doing that. He was also voted most outstanding agricultural enterprise in Africa by the African Leadership Institute. So we're really lucky to have them. Please write down questions you want to ask them. But let's start off, maybe Patricia, why don't you just start us off with a general overview of Don't Lose the Plot and how you're using media to affect change in ag.
Okay, hi everybody. I think the best way for me to describe Don't Lose the Plot is maybe to show a little trailer of what it's all about.
Four young farmers from Kenya and Tanzania have been chosen to put their farming skills to the ultimate test. Leah, the smart businesswoman, a 28-year-old from Nyahururu. Leah juggles running her own fashion business, being a mom and managing a farm. Will her multitasking and business knowledge be enough to steal the crown? Issa, the hustler, a 26-year-old farmer from Meru, Arusha. There's no doubt that this guy knows his way around a farm. He grew up working on his family's farm in Arusha. Will he be able to master the business side of farming fast enough, or will his interest in gambling distract his focus? Winrose, the quiet one, a 24-year-old from Meru, Arusha. Don't mistake Winrose's quietness for weakness. This girl has got staying power and focus. But will she be competitive enough to go that extra mile? Kenneth, the student. Despite being the youngest, there is no denying that this 19-year-old is an academic superhero. He is full of creative ideas, wisdom, and hope. But will his forward thinking and positive attitude be enough to trump the more experienced farmers? Over the next 9 months, these four will take to the battlefield for a challenge of a lifetime. Each farmer is given 1 acre of land to call their own. They have 9 months to turn their acre into a successful farm. At the end, the farmer with the most profitable and sustainable farm walks away with a monumental prize. The stakes are high and the clock is ticking. Who will be our farming hero?
Thank you. I think we now get the idea of what Don't Lose the Plot is all about. So media usually develops educative and entertaining TV, radio, and SMS messages for East Africa. That is, the messages are highly effective in impacting on people's knowledge, attitude, and practice. You may ask how we came about with Don't Lose a Plot. We have a show called Shamba Shape Up, and Shamba means a small plot in Swahili. So we've been doing Shamba Shape Up, which is a reality makeover show where we demonstrate to small-scale holder farmers on how to improve productivity and incomes on their farms. And in the 8 years that we've been doing this, in every farm that we went to, we found it was the parents who were older, that were the ones who were farming. And the young people were not really being engaged in any decision-making or any of the farming. And when we talked to them, they used to be like, yeah, I would like to do this, but I don't have any access to land or finance. I don't know how to go about it. And I think after 8 years, we decided it was time to engage the youth and, do something for them. So we decided to do a reality competition show. We selected 4 young farmers, 2 from Kenya, 2 from Tanzania. We gave them each 1 acre of land and gave them all the expert knowledge that they needed, from financial education to expert advice on how to grow your crops and how to run a small business. And whoever made the most money out of that farm in 9 months won either an acre back home or an investment worth $10,000. So that was exciting. I will tell you that the Tanzanians won the Kenyans. They were way better than the Kenyans when it came to farming.
Tell us a little bit about how you measure whether or not the impact of TV and radio and social media is actually changing that behavior.
So the way we do it is, as we make the program, what we do is we go out into the field just before we broadcast, and we select 800 TV viewers. So out of this, with a show like Shamba Shape Up, is we look at 400 TV viewers who actually watch the program. We ask them questions on what is their knowledge about the things that we're doing, what are their attitudes, and what are they practicing. So what are they doing around these key issues? Then after the broadcast, what we do is we go back and ask the same questions. And that way we gauge, you see that what increases were in the knowledge, in the attitudes, and in the practice. The one thing I'll tell you is, I think on doing Shamba Shape Up is that in 8 years, when we started 8 years ago, about 4% of people were doing soil test. So people were not doing any soil test. And now, 8 years on, we are at 17%. So we keep on drumming the things that we think people really need to know. And some things people just, have got it and are doing it. So we leave that aside.
So you have about how many weekly viewers in different formats, radio, TV?
Okay, so on Don't Lose the Plot, which was a really new show, we had 3 million household viewers watching every week for 3 months. In the growing season, that's between March. So whatever people were seeing on TV were things that they could then go back and implement. So we have to make sure it's very timely and it goes and coincides with the rainy season in East Africa. On radio, we reach about 1.2 million viewers, and we go out in the evening just after the main news. So, yeah.
Excellent. Great. Ignatius, tell us a little bit about Art Planet Academy. How did it come to be, and a little bit more about the focus of what it does?
In 2016, after a couple of my siblings had graduated without employment, and basing on the fact that I was the son of a peasant farmer, I was really inspired to start the Art Planet Academy, which is basically a youth-led agro-innovations hub located in Midwestern Uganda. This is a center that develops innovation to change the way people practice and look at agriculture. We achieve this through our 3-phased curriculum, which has the first phase being the experiential learning phase, through which we recruit youth aged 15 to 35 into a program that immerses them into management, development, and marketing of a specific agricultural enterprise. Now, what happens is when you're done with this phase, you do it at our Center of Agro-Innovations. When you're done with this phase, you move to the second phase, which involves the training. It's the training phase in which you conduct enterprise-specific trainings in our partner schools. So we partner with primary and secondary schools. So you replicate this training into those schools. If you've been doing a training in indigenous chicken production, that's what you've had at our center. In the schools, you do trainings in indigenous chicken production. Then, when students have established an agriculture enterprise in the school, because it's a practical training, we later work with them to extend these trainings into their homes. As a result, home agriculture enterprises are established. Actually, these enterprises that are established in homes help a family elevate their incomes by about $8 a week. Now, the enterprises that were established in the school help a school save about $100 every year. When you finish the second phase and you've successfully implemented that, the school has established an enterprise and the kids have established enterprises in their homes, family enterprises, you then move to the third phase, which we call the replication phase. In the replication phase, you as a youth whom we recruited is supposed to replicate that specific enterprise that you've been trained in into your home. The essence of this is for you to create your own enterprise that will offer you employment and also employ other people. When you finish these 3 phases of our curriculum, we are sure that 1, you've attained the skills of developing an enterprise, managing it and marketing it. 2, you've attained the training skills, so you're capable of training other people in your community on how to establish that enterprise. And 3 is you have established your own enterprise, so you're going to be self-employed and also employ other people. So at the Art Planet Academy, we are not only creating agriculture entrepreneurs, but we are also developing them and inspiring the next generation of young agriculture entrepreneurs in Africa.
Excellent. Thank you so much. About how many schools are you currently working in?
We are currently working with 22 primary schools and 20 secondary schools and 2 universities.
Just so you know, his budget last year? Last year, your budget.
Last year alone, we were able to use, we've been working under a budget of $1,000.
$1,000. But they've increased their budget by tenfold, and they'll be reaching 100 schools this year. So with a budget of 10,000. This is one of the big challenges, is how do we invest in youth-led local solutions? We have way too many young people interested out on the front line in partnering with organizations like yours, and how we find the mechanisms to do that is a key challenge, not only for USA, but quite frankly, all our partners. But when you ignite that, or combine our resources together with the passion that young people have, the potential is tremendous. Tell us a little bit more about what sort of changes you're seeing in young people who are in the Art Planet Academy, in terms of like change in income for weekly income or monthly income.
For the schools, schools have been able to save $100 every year. That is way too much for a rural school. This is a school where students pay very little money, and at times they don't pay. And then for the homes, we've been able to elevate each individual homestead by $8 every week. You realize
$8,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
8. So you realize their initial income is about $5 per week. That's about $20 a month. So if we elevate this by an extra $8 every week, that pushes their income to about $13 every week. Then for these individual youths whom we take through the program, have been able to establish their own enterprises. Now, these are enterprises that are economically viable. If your enterprise is not economically viable, then you do not graduate from our program. You'll have to repeat the replication phase until your enterprise is economically viable, can fetch you a good income. So you can look at agriculture as profitable and decent employment.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit more about your own personal story? What factors led to your success, or with the young people you work with, what are those factors that are really the determinant in being successful or not? Mentors or finance or other? Yeah.
Growing up as a son of a peasant farmer, I would say everyone would expect you to hate agriculture because we used to do agriculture the hard way. By the way, you know the whole agriculture. So what happens is, when I was young, our dad worked so hard, extremely hard, just like any other family head in that village. They wanted to send us to school. We graduate, become lawyers, doctors. We go get huge monies, come back, transform them from poverty, probably to have a better life. But this didn't work out. My siblings graduated without jobs. That story was the same in very many other families. Now, when they failed to get jobs, they would come back in the village, fit back into the peasant farming again, irrespective of their graduation. Now, what happened is when I was growing up, I really looked at my dad as my role model. He worked so hard, but he got that very little income, and he managed to send me to school. Now, when I thought about that, I said, when I grow, I'll do agriculture the hard way, just like he has done it, and I will be rich. So the essence was, I tried to think out always how I can make agriculture profitable. That saw me starting the Art Planet Academy. Majorly is I had a person onto whom I would look to. My dad was my mentor and role model in this. That drove my passion so fast. So I would say passion and someone you look unto, your role model, were so important in my career, I can say. Then education. When I first went to university, that was 2013. I will tell you a secret. I first went to university in 2014, but up to date, I'm in my first year in 2018. Yeah, the issue is I was first admitted into biotechnology, Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology, which is typically lab work. I was not that kind of person. 1 year later, I realized I was being misplaced. I talked to my dad, and he was like, you can't be a peasant farmer like me. You have to study, become a medical personnel, so you'll be able to get huge monies. I told him, no. If I'm not going to do an agriculture degree, then I'll not go back to school. So you can realize this happened at a time when I was thinking clearly about what I should do in the academy. That's part of the Art Planet Academy. So when I first joined university, I realized I was exposed to a community of people who were coming from big families, people who were coming from rich backgrounds, people who were connected, people who were open to opportunities. This helped me to get opened up to new opportunities. I would say education did a huge part, not as per se that what I achieved from it, but the opportunities that I got exposed to as a result of joining the university. So education, passion, and mentorship, or role models, the people whom we look at.
Excellent, thank you. Patricia, how about you? What types of support do young people need to earn profitable, sustainable livelihoods, and what's been your experience?
For me, my experience has been around an enabling environment. The way media has worked, when they started, we first started on radio, and this was in the 1990s. I was not with them then. And when they did a radio program, towards 2000, the viewership kept on dropping down, from 8 million to 2 million, It went down, and some research was funded to find out why this was happening. And at that time, there was, in Kenya, the FM stations had come up, so we no longer had just one station. Also, there was the Great Wall of China television, black and white television, that had just gotten into the market. That was equivalent to the price of a good goat then. So a lot of people were using that. So we then moved from radio to TV and started a drama called Makutano Junction. And that ran on for a number of years. And through that, we found that was a drama where we did a lot of social issues, but we also did a lot of agricultural stuff. And every time we did an agricultural story, there was a lot of, interactions with the audience and people wanting to know what silage is, how do you make it? And that prompted us to think, to do more research. And we found that 70% of this audience, the TV audience, were actually rural and peri-urban. So we thought, we needed to design something for them. And that's how we came up with the reality show called Shamba Shape Up. And from Shamba Shape Up, doing it for 8 years and going to these farms and looking for a farm to do all these demos, we found a lot of things. There were things on food security. A lot of the women were using the 3 stones in terms of heat. And some of the families were, yes, producing this amazing food, but were not consuming it. So that led us to start thinking about food security and nutrition. So we then, again, started a program called Shamba Chef, where we were looking at the adoption of cleaner, safer energy within the homestead, and also nutrition, especially for the mother and the child for the first 1,000 days of the child's life. So that also went out. And within that realm is where we also discovered that the youth were not engaging in agriculture, but they wanted to. So that's how Don't Lose the Plot has. So for me, it has been the environment that I have been that has made it, possible for us to see all these things and also do research behind it and actually get data and see how we can implement this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we heard this morning a number of the challenges that young people face: credit, access to land, just the perception of agricultural production. Did we miss any key challenges that you're hearing from young people today? And what would be your recommendation to donors and partners in this room? What do they need to do to improve the investments we're making in connecting young people to youth employment in rural areas?
Okay, I think within my community and in East Africa, a lot of the things that we find on the ground were explained today in the morning. And the first one with the youth is always, access to land. They'll always tell you, but I don't have the land to farm. And even as we were doing Don't Lose the Plot, those were some of the questions we wanted to address. And for us, one way we went about it was to, speak to the parents. In the African setting, you just don't give out your land, especially if you're still alive. And in most cases, you're talking to your last born, and they just don't want to divide the land. But how we went around it was to ask the youth if they were willing to lease the land from the parents, because that way the parents, because they're not farming this land, because first, the age, most of them in East Africa are like 60 and above, and so they don't have the energy, even if it's to farm it properly. So we were asking them for the youth to lease the land from the parents. And through that, they passed all the traditional and the taboos. The other thing I know has been a challenge for the youth is the access to knowledge, information, and education around agriculture. It's well and good for us to sit and talk about we need to engage the youth, but how are we going to do it? Youth are not reading newspapers. They're not, they are on their mobile phones. So we really have to engage them on the platforms that they use the most, and that is ICT and mobile. So for the donors, that will be something that, worth thinking about as we go forward and trying to engage the youth in this. The other thing is, access to financial services. That's a big thing for the youth. They don't know, the loans are not really favorable for them. We need to talk more to the SACCOs to include them into all this. We need to look at other ways of engaging the youth, even within the ICTs, in order for them to get, to access these funds in order to do their, business in agriculture.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Ignatius?
I will start with the finance. Why would you give a maize farmer a loan that requires them to pay back in the very first month after acquiring the loan? Finance is there, accessibility is there, but the nature of the finances. Why would you give a poultry farmer a loan of 3 million Ugandan shillings and you expect them to pay you back, to start paying back after 1 month? Yet you clearly know that poultry takes more than 3 months to start yielding. So finance is there, access is there, but the kind of finance we are having is not friendly. Then too is around skills. About 4 years back, our village and Uganda at large was hit by the maize armyworm due to climate change. Now, what happens is farmers and the youths who do agriculture have been having this traditional knowledge of doing agriculture because their ancestors did it this way, their fathers did it this way, they're also going to do it that same way. Now, when the maize armyworm came, there was a need to change the way we do agriculture from that way to a new and innovative way of growing maize. Because Masindi alone is one of the greatest producers of maize, when this hit Masindi, 45% of the produce from this region fall down. Yet this is the major crop grown in the region. So there was need to change the way people do agriculture, but we don't have institutions to do that in the region. We don't have institutions to equip these youth with these generational skills for agriculture. Believe it or not, there should have been a change in the way they do it. At the academy, we came up with various ways on how we could counter that. Then I'll talk about, we don't have agricultural specific innovation spaces in our rural areas. We don't have spaces where youths can come to think innovatively about agriculture as per se, to innovate around what they are doing in farming in particular. If we had such spaces where these youth could come and think innovatively of how probably they can grow maize the better way, or add value to maize in an innovative way, or how they can form synergies to form better products out of what they are doing, it would really be of great importance. I think there should be support around creating these innovations, agricultural specific innovation spaces. There should be support around developing institutions that provide specific skills that match this century agriculture, because the problems are changing, but the way they do agriculture is not changing. Basically, I think
excellent.
That would be important.
Thank you so much to both of you. Do we have time for taking a couple questions?
Maybe 2 questions.
All right, let's take 2 questions from the audience. One back there, Hillary. Yes, go ahead. We'll start with Hillary.
My name is Hillary Proctor, and I'm with Making Sense International. And my question to the two of you is, what is the role that family plays in youth's involvement with agriculture? Is it to support youth or a barrier? And then what would be your recommendations for us in engaging family to be able to support youth?
Excellent. And then one more right here.
Thank you so much, Patricia and the Kenyans, for your wonderful, we were hearing from the horse mouth on the ground and what you do. I was part of the yearly USID yearly. I reviewed the yearly students, and also I was at the World Bank spring meeting, and I was really proud of you. I met the awardees of the award from Somali on renewable energy, Madagascar and Rwanda when I was there. I also attended most of the event on fintech, blockchain, lab tech. I'm old 62, but I really want to go with the system where you
Excellent. Good question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my question is, how, looking at being on the, how do we work with you, and how do you, like you just talked about hubs, agriculture hubs, you've said the problems, and the problems you've said is real, what it is. So what do you want us to do, especially the Board for International Food Agriculture, USID? They are very active, and I thank you for this. So how can we help you and work with you, looking at Uganda and my country lady from Kenya?
Excellent.
Mike,
Thank you.
we'll
Maybe
do one
two-
more
oh,
quick,
one more back
quick,
there. Yes.
One more quick one.
Thank you very much. Daniel Foster, Associate Professor of Ag and Extension Education. And I've learned a lot this morning, but this panel inspired me. And I want to say thank you, because it reminds us to get the hell out of the way of the innovation and creativity of youth. Like, you know what you're doing. And Ignatius, as I've dedicated my life to inspiring educators to inspire the next generation of agriculturalists, I just wish that the teachers I work with could have a chance to talk to you, to learn your approach to inspire and your sound philosophy. And the specific question is, I want to learn very pragmatically, what role does your school play in the transition from school-based enterprises to home-based enterprises of supervising? So your teachers, those folks that are helping those young people after they've learned it in phase 1, what role do you play in supervising those home-based projects or supervised agricultural experience projects at home? Thank you.
Excellent. Why don't you start, Ignatius, and then we'll go to Patricia.
Okay. I'll pick up from him. We've developed a mechanism that takes the load away from us. As I told you, when we recruit these youth, it is when we recruit them into the program, it is their responsibility to train the students in the school, in the primary and secondary school, okay? So when they establish the enterprise in the school, it is still the responsibility of this student, because it is a prerequisite for graduation, to work with individual children in that school, to extend this into the home. How they do this is they conduct weekly trainings in the homestead. Our training lasts for 1 hour, and it happens once a week. So this is a training that is identical to that occurred at school, but now he's doing it in the home together with the family members of that specific child. Ours is to monitor the quality and the profitability of the enterprises established.
The role of family.
Role of family. Family can play 2 roles. It can be a barrier, it can also be supportive. For my case, family was supportive. We are 18 children from the same dad, 7 children from the same mom. What happens in Africa is land is owned by family. If you have 10 acres of land and your 10 children, trust me, each one of those children will get a share of the land. Now, what happens if you want to do agriculture? Because it will become too small for you. If your siblings said, no, I have to take my share, and then I have to take my share, you'll end up doing agriculture on a small piece of land. For my case, it was consensus. They allowed to give me land. So I'm able to access 50 acres of land just like that. However, in case if the family had said, no, each one of us needs their share, I wouldn't be able to practice agriculture on the 50 acres of land. So it is a two-sided coin. It can be supportive, it can be a barrier.
Patricia.
As Ignatius has said, yes, family plays an important role, and it's either supportive or it's a barrier. And in our case, we want to include the family in this situation because they are the owners. Like in Kenya, the land is owned by the parents, so we have to really include them. And when we speak with the parents and we tell them, fine, you don't have to give out your land, but you can actually earn the same amount of money that you are making now if you give it to your son, you lease it out to your son. So I think it's very important for us to engage with family. And the way media has done it is we were in Uganda last year and we were doing a drama show where we're trying to get families to work together within the farm and do it as a business. So this is including the women and the youth, which is a big thing because in most cases in the African setting is that the man owns the land, the woman toils, but when it comes time to get the money, the man takes the money. But it's the woman and maybe the youth who are then toiling, doing the hard work, and the man takes it. But what we're trying to do is encourage, and we're doing this through programming. This is something that people are watching on TV, so you either adopt it or you don't, and you're also listening to it in radio. And that makes people to start talking about it and start thinking, okay, well, this is not a bad thing because I don't lose out. We develop together as a family.
Excellent. Thank you both for sharing your insights, your leadership, and your innovation.
Thank you.
We all look forward to how we embrace many more young leaders like you. Thank you.